everybody, and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to make a butter pie, or a Lancashire butter pie actually. Now this is a pastry, and enclosed in the pastry are slices of potato and onion, and then butter as well. And that's basically all there is to the pie. And from having read up about this, it seems that one theory is that this is a pie which was popularised in Preston and Bury and those areas of Lancashire in the 19th century to be eaten on a Friday when Catholicism dictated that you shouldn't eat meat. Now that's one theory. Whether it's right or not, I don't know. Another story that I read was of a family, I think it was a carpenter, who had lots of children and they couldn't afford much to eat, and one of the things they could eat from time to time was this potato, onions and pastry. So whatever it is, it's an old-fashioned type of recipe, and I think these days, although I'm going to do it in that traditional way, just with those ingredients, I think these days people might like to put some shredded parmesan or maybe some mustard powder or something in to give some extra flavour to the pie. But as I said, I'm going to do it in the way that it was done originally. And for this I start off by taking an 8-inch springform pan, basically cake pan, which I have buttered, and I set that to one side. So that's where I'm going to form my pie, and I'll go on to the ingredients. And for this I have 400 grams, which is 2 2/3 cups, based on scooping packed flour into a 250 milliliter cup of plain flour. I have 200 grams, 14 tablespoons plus 1 teaspoon of cold unsalted butter, which I've cut into cubes. I have 45 millilitres, 3 tablespoons of ice cold water, and 1 medium egg, which would be large in the USA. I do also have another egg, which I will use to brush on the top of the pie once I've assembled the pie. And then for the filling, I have 1 kilogram, which is 2.2 pounds of potatoes, and I'm using Maris Piper potatoes. And then I have 2 onions, and the weight of these onions is 450 grams, so about a pound of onions. And I have a vegetable stock cube. I also have 170 grams, 12 tablespoons of butter. And then I'm going to use salt and pepper to taste. I will put a pinch of the salt into the pastry as well, but salt and pepper to taste. And once I have boiled my potatoes in the stock cube, I will taste the potatoes, because stock cubes often release quite a lot of salt. That will determine how much salt I actually put in my pie. So that's all the ingredients, and the first thing we need to do is to prepare the potatoes and the onions. And for the potatoes, I'm going to peel them and slice them into about 1/4-inch slices, basically, and for the onions, slightly thinner than that. I have peeled and sliced my potatoes, and I have put my stock cube into some water in a saucepan, and I'm going to put the potatoes in, and then I'm going to top up with more water until the potatoes are fully covered if they need it. And just need a little drop more water probably. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put those onto my stove, and I'm going to bring them to the boil and then just simmer them gently, covered, until they are tender. So probably about 10 minutes. I want them to still be able to be picked up and retain their shape, but just until they're tender. And while the potatoes are simmering, I'm going to soften my onions in about half of the butter. So I had 170, in about 85 grams of the butter. And I'm just going to gently cook the onions until they've softened. And I don't want these onions to colour necessarily. And I've simply cut them into slices, cut them in half and cut them into slices. And I'm just going to toss them around in the pan until they've coloured and softened. Sorry, I'm just going to gently toss them around in the pan until they've softened nicely and they're coated in the butter. So my onions have softened now, and I'm going to take those off the heat and drain the butter from them and allow them to go cold or cool down. And I've also cooked my potatoes, and they're cooked through, beginning to break just a little bit, but that doesn't matter. And I've actually laid them out on a series of plates for them to cool down and dry off. And so when that's happened, we'll go on and we'll make our pastry. So with my potatoes and onions cooling down, I'm going to go on now to make the pastry, and I'm going to do this in the bowl of my immersion blender. And I'm going to first of all take a good pinch of salt and put that into the flour, and then I'm going to put the flour and the butter into the bowl. And I'm going to process that until it resembles sort of fine breadcrumbs and the butter is incorporated well into the flour. And that's good like that. So then I'm going to add my egg, which I have beaten. I'm going to process that, and as I do so I'm going to add my water, and I may not need all of the water, and I want the mixture to begin to clump together basically. So I'll add a couple of tablespoons. And I'll add a little drop more water. I think it's almost there. And that is clumping, as you can see, so I'm going to tip that out. And I'm just going to knead that just to make sure that it all comes together. and that's good like that. So then I'm going to wrap that in plastic wrap, and I'm going to chill it for about 30 minutes. So I'm going to form it into a ball and then flatten it into a disc. And I'll cover it like that. And I'm going to put that in the fridge and chill it for 30 minutes. And I'll come back in 30 minutes, we'll roll it out, put it into the pan, and then fill it to assemble our pie. So my pastry has chilled, and I have put it onto a floured surface, and I've cut off 1/3 of it and put that back in the fridge. That's going to be the top of the pie. So I'm going to roll this out so that it's large enough to fit the inside of my 8-inch springform pan. And with that rolled out, I'm going to put it in my pan. Now if it cracks and breaks, I'm not going to worry, because it's very soft and it will patch very easily. So I'll lift it and drop it into the pan like that, and push it up against the sides. And that's quite good like that. Just make sure it's into the corners. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my potato and I'm going to create a layer of potato on the bottom of the pan. And with some of the softer pieces, I'm going to push them down into the corners. And with the bottom covered, I'm going to take about half of my onion and spread that over. Like that. And then I'm going to sprinkle some salt over. and a little bit of pepper. I don't know whether I mentioned I prefer to use white pepper, but you can use whatever you want, like that. And then another layer of potato, another layer of onion, and another layer of potato. And with that in, I'm just going to put a little bit more salt and pepper on. And then I'm going to take my remaining butter and I'm going to put little flakes of it on the top of the potato, like that. And I think that's enough. And I'm going to fold my pastry over, like that. And then I'm just going to set that to one side while I roll out the remaining dough. So we just need to roll this out so that it will fit over the top of the pie. So I've beaten my second egg, and I'm going to just use a little bit of that to brush around the edge of the pastry here. Like that. And then I'm going to take the rolled out pastry and drop that onto the surface, and press it down. Like that. And I'm going to brush over the top with the egg. And I'm going to make a hole in the centre, and that's to let steam out. And I'm going to put that into the fridge, and I'm just going to chill it in the fridge while I preheat my oven to 180 degrees Celsius, 160 Celsius with a fan, 350 Fahrenheit. And then once the oven has come to temperature, I'm going to put this into the oven and I'm going to bake it for 40 minutes. That should allow the pastry to go a nice golden brown colour on top and cook on the bottom, and it will heat the potatoes and the onions through, and so that will then be ready to serve. So once it's cooked for 40 minutes, I'll come back and show you what it looks like and we'll have a taste. I baked the Lancashire butter pie for 40 minutes. I took it out of the oven and I left it for a few minutes, and then I took the outer ring of the springform pan off. and I've now cut a slice of the pie. So this is what the pie looks like, and it's baked quite nicely, I have to say, and I'll have a taste of it. It has a lovely buttery pastry, and then I get the flavour of the onion and obviously the potato with just that butter that's melted through it as it's baked. It's very, very nice, and I can quite see how this would have been popular in those days when people didn't eat meat on Fridays. Now, as I say, I think this would be even better if it had some parmesan cheese sprinkled and maybe over the potatoes and onions, or some mustard powder or something like that. But it's very good, and I understand it's often served with pickled red cabbage, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to stir fry some vegetables and eat mine with stir fried vegetables. So that's going to be it for this recipe, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for the recipe, and I'll put a link below the video as well, and I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.